You never forget the moment the sky turns against you. At 36,000 feet over the Atlantic, with the steady hum of the engines as your only company, you'd think there's nowhere safer. But that's the kind of arrogance flying fosters, the illusion of control when you're at the mercy of forces far beyond your comprehension. Tonight, on what should have been another mind-numbingly routine red-eye, I learned how fragile that illusion really is. My name's Captain Ray Archer. I've been flying for 2 decades, 20 years of chasing the horizon, trading my nights for days and my days for a paycheck that never feels big enough. I'm not some romantic aviator. The charm of flying wore off somewhere over my 3rd sleepless Christmas Eve in the cockpit. These days, it's just me, the plane, and my tired first officer, Kyle, young, eager, the kind of guy who still thinks flying is magic. I let him take off tonight. I figured he could use the practice. Me? I was just counting the hours to touch down in London, where a quiet hotel room and a bottle of scotch waited. The Atlantic stretched endless and black below us. The stars were faint pinpricks scattered across a velvet sky. Most of the passengers were asleep or pretending to be. The autopilot hummed along, steady as ever. Another night, another routine flight, or so I thought. It started as a glimmer, just a faint, flickering light off the starboard wing. At first, I thought it was another aircraft, but something about it wasn't right. It moved too fast, darting like a firefly on steroids. I blinked, leaned forward, and squinted into the dark. "Kyle," I said, breaking the steady rhythm of his weather report. "You seeing this?" He looked up, then followed my gaze. The light grew brighter, resolving into a sphere of glowing, golden-white energy. It danced along the side of the aircraft, moving in impossible arcs. One moment ahead of us, the next trailing behind. It wasn't like any aircraft, drone, or atmospheric phenomenon I'd ever seen. My training kicked in. "Contact ATC," I said, keeping my voice steady, though my pulse wasn't. "Let them know we've got an anomaly." Kyle nodded, grabbing the radio. "Control, this is Flight 219. We're observing..." The comms died mid-sentence. A loud hiss replaced Kyle's words. The cockpit lights flickered, and for a gut-clenching moment, every instrument on the panel went dark. The plane itself groaned as if it were alive and scared. "Christ," Kyle whispered. He was gripping the yoke now, though the autopilot was still technically engaged. "What's going on?" "Stay calm," I snapped, though I didn't feel calm. "Backup systems should kick in." They did, sluggishly, but as the displays blinked back to life, that damn orb moved closer, hovering just outside the cockpit window. Its glow was searing, casting eerie shadows across the dials and levers. "Is it scanning us?" Kyle asked, his voice barely audible. "I don't know," I admitted. I was supposed to have all the answers, but tonight I felt like a rookie. "Just hold steady." Then, as suddenly as it appeared, the orb vanished. One blink, and it was gone, leaving behind only the night and the distant stars. The comms sputtered back to life, and a voice crackled through. "Flight 219, do you copy? We lost you for approximately 3 minutes. Please confirm your status." "Control, this is Captain Archer. We're stable now." My hand trembled as I keyed the mic. "But we've experienced some kind of unidentified object. Stand by." Kyle exhaled loudly. "It's gone," he said, slumping back into his seat. But it wasn't over, not even close. Passengers started buzzing over the intercom. The flight attendants reported that people were waking up, panicked. Some claimed to have seen symbols etched on their windows, alien geometric patterns that pulsed with faint light before fading into nothing. One woman swore the patterns moved, shifting like something alive. I left Kyle to manage the controls and stepped into the cabin. The air was thick with unease. Passengers clutched at each other, staring at their windows or whispering frantically to the crew. I felt the prickling sensation of being watched, though every face I met was wide-eyed and terrified. When I returned to the cockpit, Kyle looked worse for wear. "You're not going to believe this," he said, pointing at the radar. "We're off course, by about 200 miles. "How?" I demanded. The autopilot was still engaged, and there were no storms, no turbulence, nothing that could explain the deviation. Kyle shook his head. "I don't know." We landed in London, hours late and unnervingly silent. The ground crew was already waiting, tipped off by our scrambled comms and the erratic flight path. But the real shock came during disembarkation. A passenger was missing. Seat 24A, a young man named Eric, according to the manifest. His luggage was still in the overhead bin, his shoes tucked neatly beneath his seat, but Eric was gone. The seat itself bore strange scorch marks, faint but undeniable, as if he'd been burned away. And on the cushion where he'd been sitting, a pile of ash. Investigations followed, of course. The airline demanded answers, the passengers demanded refunds, and the authorities demanded silence. We gave them what little we had, but the truth didn't satisfy anyone. Not me, not Kyle, and certainly not the family of Eric from 24A. The orb, the symbols, the ash, they haunt me. The skies, once my sanctuary, now feel like a hostile void. Every time I take off, I scan the horizon, half expecting that impossible light to return. I'm no romantic, but I've learned to respect the unknown. Up there, above the clouds, you don't rule the skies. Something else does. Something we'll never understand. And I hope to God it never finds me again.